motion for approval of the minutes as listed in our agenda?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And item 2 is the Finance Director Comptroller submitting to the City of West Dallas 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Angelito, you might want to sit here.
Chris, have at it, please.
All right, thank you. I'm actually going to turn things over to Jordan Boehm, who's here from Clifton Larson Allen, who can, he's going to provide kind of an overview of kind of summary of results for 2019 and just kind of an overview of the audit. So
Okay, sounds good.
I can,
Oh, thanks, Chris.
that work?
So thank you everybody for having me. I guess first question, am I coming through okay with the mask on? Okay. So just a few items, I know you have a busy schedule, that I do want to highlight is CLA was the independent auditors for the City of West Dallas for this year, for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019 audit report. Few items on the agenda that I just hope to cover is ultimately the independent auditors report that was issued. Couple little commentary on general fund budget and fund balance. A quick note on some of the deficit fund balances you would see related to certain funds and the plan to recover those deficits. And then ultimately the governance communications and then some of the recommendations and best practices we have from performing our audit. Okay, so the independent auditors report in that nice big heavy pack financial statement that everybody gets.
Can you come up to the table
Sure.
or get closer to the
microphone.
mic?
Sure.
Sorry.
Lavalier mic.
So in that large document that we provide, or that gets put together, the auditor's opinion is actually only about 3 pages long. That's where we provide the results of our audit. And what we do is provide results on the audit from the perspective of your governmental activities, your business type activities, and each of the major funds. So think general fund, capital projects fund, those types of things. As well as the inclusion of the fire financial statements as well in the report. So the results of all of the work that we do over the course of many months, and we really ask a lot of questions and ask for a lot of supporting documentation from Chris and her team, resulted in an unmodified opinion. So accounting language means clean. So the financial statements that you have in front of you, in our opinion, reflect materially the financial results and position of the City of West Dallas. So the budgetary items that I have are just a couple items of note. I won't dive too deep into the details because of the fact that the audit work that we performed did not result in any changes to your general fund. So the information you've been getting related to your general fund, we concluded is proper and accurate. So, with that being said, just looking at the revenue side of things, just one thing I wanted to highlight. The orange bar is the actual results. The blue bar is the budget, your final budget. And in each of the revenue categories, you did have a slight surplus from the perspective of what you planned for. So that's a good thing. From the expenditure side of things, again, same format, orange being actual, blue being final budget. There was one overage to note, that was related to public safety. So with that, when we have overages, one thing we do recommend is that you look at the process, whether it's reappropriating certain funds or making an amendment to that budget so that you have a formal process around that. So that's my note there. Before I move forward beyond kind of just this kind of preliminary and intro financial and budget results, is there any questions as of yet? Okay. So from a fund balance standpoint, also another important item that is heavily looked at by the public and by the committees would be your unassigned fund balance. And the city has a policy to maintain a fund balance of at least $15 million in that unassigned category, which is the bottom number. Right now you're at 17.2, and for context, last year you were at 18.1. So as you exceed budget, on your expenditures and those budget or the actual results of the expenditures are exceeding your budget, and you don't have revenues to offset, that is one of the items that results in a drawdown of that unassigned fund balance, because that's what's being consumed in order to pay for those costs. So there was a slight decrease. The GFOA, which is the Government Finance Organizations Association, recommends typically 2 to 3 months of fund balance and unassigned, and you guys do exceed that, so you do have a healthy fund balance. I'm just pointing it out for a note. So deficit fund balances. One of the reasons that I do like to highlight these are that when there's deficits, usually you need to have a planned revenue source to bring this deficit to a break even or a slight surplus. The good news is most of your deficits, when we look at it from this perspective, are your TIDs. And the reason for that is you front load costs on the TIDs, those tax increment districts, to recover the costs on the back end through the increased value in the tax base within that district. So long as your tax districts continue to perform as you would expect, those deficits will be recovered in future years. So there isn't a structural fund balance deficit related to those funds at this time. The one other fund I would note is public works improvement. And really what that relates to is when you do improvements that you would special assess for, the accounting rules basically state that if those revenues aren't collected within a certain period of time beyond year end, we defer them for a future period for when that cash comes in. So that fund balance deficit will also be financed by the future collections on those special assessments related to those projects. So similarly, not a structural deficit, it's just performing the work and waiting to receive the cost reimbursement for that work. Okay. So the governance communication, I will let you know that no is always a good thing with auditors. When we don't have a lot to say, that's usually a good sign. So I do like to note that within the financial statements, the footnotes are categorized 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Within note 1, that's where we have the explanation for the methods by which the numbers are ultimately accounted for and the financial results that you see in those reports. So if there's anything as you're going through those reports and you say, I wonder what that is, you can take a look there to get what I call a high-level summary as to what that activity is, and it may reference you to other parts of the report that have further detail for you to look at. Items like that would include debt, capital assets, your pension, and your OPEB, or other post-employment benefits. So in 19, there were not any new accounting standards that were adopted, so your 19 report is very consistent with 18 should you choose to look at both next to each other. And no transactions lacked authoritative guidance. That basically means that the city wasn't out on a limb in recording any of their accounting transactions. There was a standard by which they were applying to recording that transaction, so it conforms to GAAP. Okay. Within the report, there are a number of accounting estimates. So one of the fun aspects of financial reporting is getting the report closed out and the year closed out. These estimates primarily affect your governmental activities. So it's the first set of financial results within that statement. And those are your retiree medical benefits that you are liable for to future retirees that have been earned to date. Similarly, your participation in the Wisconsin retirement system for the local retiree life insurance and the pension. Good news, and I always like to say this, is participating in WRS is a good thing. That means you have one of the healthiest funded pensions in the country. So I think as of the last I saw, it's within the top 3 in the country. So almost 100% funded as of 2019. Couple other items to note. There is some estimates related to the useful lives of your assets, so think of the building we're in. Finance will make an estimate as to how long the building will last and will expense the building over a period of time rather than incurring that expense all in 1 year on those first sets of statements. And then lastly, they're a little bit smaller, but the allowance for doubtful accounts related to any receivables you may have and your health claims payable and workers' compensation liabilities at the end of the year. So the audit results. So we have no particularly sensitive financial statement disclosures. Those types of things would typically only be brought up if there were items relating to going concerns or other significant matters. So this is a very standard report, and that is a good thing. Note, we didn't have any significant difficulties in performing the audit. We did have what we call one uncorrected misstatement. What this means is that we, as a part of our audit, we identified one item that was less than material. So in scope, this was about $100,000 related to the fire records. That was an interest that was receivable on one of the notes that they had made to TIF, one of your TIFs. So we passed on that. Those financial records are audited by other auditors, and they were accepted for inclusion in your report. And in addition, we did have 2 journal entries that we proposed to Chris and her team in all of the work that we do, which is we look at things for about 400 hours, give or take, to do this process. So we have 2 items to bring up, and really what they were related to is not day-to-day transactional type of activities from a recognition of receipts as revenue or disbursements as expense. What it really had to do was with the arrangements that the TIDs have with fire that can be somewhat complex from how they get reported within the financial statements. So overall, really, it was a good year from that standpoint. We didn't have any disagreements with management. Chris hasn't told me about any. So we do ask for management's representations related to the completeness of the information that's provided. So we just asked management to sign an attestation that said if we asked for information, you were able to provide it, and it's full set. And then ultimately no consultations with other accountants, and we didn't have any issues in performing our group audit, which the group audit is the fire financial statements in that audit report and working with that audit team. So from a recommendation and management letter standpoint, so these items are recommendations related to best practice. The first one is the preparation of the financial statements. So as your auditors, we are contracted to do the initial preparation of the document for review by management. When we do have proposed audit adjustments that are accepted by management, we do have this recommendation related to the handling of those types of transactions. And I know Chris and I have talked at length about TID and the accounting for some of these arrangements and these agreements, and have a plan for kind of tackling these on the front end as we move forward. So the best practice recommendations, these are items that we bring to the attention of management and really aren't typically meeting the level of needing to communicate to governance. We let you know that we've communicated them because you do get a letter related to it that details it further in your packet. And really what this kind of boils down to is just, and I know you're working on this through the implementation of DocuWare, is a consistent approach to documenting the review of the transactions that are occurring. We didn't find any transactions that didn't have the appropriate support or detail to validate the transaction. It's just the evidence of the review by the individual who's performing the control to ensure that either the expense is going to the right account or that the revenue is going to the right account. So these really are just kind of summarized at a very high level. If you do want more detail, it is included in the management letter. So with that, I wanted to make sure to try to stay somewhat on schedule. I know you got a busy night. Does the group have any questions that I can answer?
All right, well, thank you very much then. Appreciate it. It's always nice to have a good, clean audit. And thanks to everybody. All right.
Yeah, I was going to say my last comment always is thank you to finance and your team. They do a lot of work to help us get through this process, and they're fantastic to work with.
Yep, to Chris, who should be our new finance director.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
It's just such a tall order.
Okay,
Thanks, George.
Yep.
thank you. All right, then I'll start reading us into closed session for items 3 and 4. For agenda items 3 and 4, the committee may convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes, section 19.851FG, Wisconsin statutes, for the purpose of considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data for specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would likely have substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations, or conferring with legal counsel, a governmental body which has rendered oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by a body with respect to litigation, which it is highly likely to become involved. And for item 4, here it goes. For the purpose of considering financial, okay, I read that part. And that's the same thing. All right, good.
Move we go into closed session. Second.
And we have a motion and a second, and Alderman Weigel,
Aye.
and Alderperson Keen,
Aye.
and Alderman Tenorio,
Aye.
and Alderman Lysick.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right, we are in closed session. Who wants to start?